most definitely. And the analysis that my colleagues did actually shows that these are conservative estimates. So let me break it down for people. My Brookings Institution colleague, Isabella Sawhill, and others did an analysis of how much it costs to raise a child. And what they found was that if your child was born in 2015 or around 2015, that by the time they are 18, you will have spent roughly $310,000 raising them. That's $18,000 a year. What does that include? We're talking about basic necessities. I want to say that again, basic necessities. Child expenses include food, healthcare, clothing, childcare, and extracurricular activities. It does not include other extras. It does not include sending your kid to private school. It does not include summer camp. We haven't even got to college yet. I mean, we are talking about an astronomical amount of money. And there's another analysis coinciding with this that's so important that shows that if people make in the range between roughly 30 to 40,000 to say 70 to $80,000 a year, that they are actually losing more money than people on the other extremes of them, including people who make less money than them because they don't qualify for any of the tax breaks. And they also aren't able to take advantage of a lot of the investment opportunities, which is where really we see money being able to keep up with inflation. Yeah, that's exactly right. Because part of what's happening is that people in the middle incomes, or that we would consider to be middle class, even though I think we really have to recalibrate that. I don't think that the household income is enough, and we need to think about other economic resources. But most of their investments are tied up in their 401k. And right now, people's 401ks are not what they used to be. Now, I do think that that's going to recover, but a lot of that has to do with where you are. But nonetheless, when you're raising a child, you're not necessarily pulling out to your 401k, or you shouldn't be doing so.
Right.
So, I mean, when we
Right.
start talking about how much it costs to raise a child, I mean, we are talking about a lot of money to feed them, for accidents related to healthcare, for just regular healthcare visits, clothing, which look, for those people like me, like you, look, I got two boys, and my oldest boy is growing like a tree. He's not growing like a weed. That dude is growing like a tree. He's growing a half an inch every month right now. That means new clothes every 3 months, new shoes every 3 months. He's eating boxes of cereal. I mean, actually, he's eating like bags of chicken. He's a pretty healthy dude. But the point is, and my youngest is growing as well. And so when we think about the cost of this, it is so much money that I really don't think people are realizing how much it costs to raise a child. And people are wondering whether or not they should actually have additional children. Well, look, as always, black people continue to make a dollar out of a nickel. And it's one of those things where people make it. It takes a community to do it. But this is also why it's very important for all of us to remember that it takes two people to create a child, and it should take two people to primarily raise the child when it comes to finances. So I think this study is really, really important because whoever the primary parent is, if people aren't married, whether it be a single mother or a single father, that when they go and ask the other parent for stuff, oftentimes they are needing it. And I think that we get into this perception in some sort of way that people are just out spending money frivolously because they wanted 2 hours to just get away and enjoy themselves. But people aren't realizing how much it costs. So what are a lot of people doing? Look, people are having to make decisions about where the money goes. So part of what that means is, of course, there are things people take advantage of. You really want to think consciously about the school district you move your child into. Because you might say, oh, okay, I can get a great value on a home, but is that the school district that you want your child to go into? So you might say, okay, maybe I need to pay a little bit more on a 30-year mortgage than I would, getting a bigger home somewhere else because the school district is better. Now I don't have to think about supplementing my child's education. I think it also, again, takes a community. You need to think about grandparents and aunties and uncles and start coming up with a plan. Like I know with my little cousins, growing up, we would always get their school supplies every year. That was what we did. School supplies. Someone else will get school clothes. So it takes a community to pay for a lot of these things. Yeah, most definitely. And this is the thing. Look, people have to understand when researchers like myself say conservative estimates, like I did earlier, as you noted, that's the bare minimum. That is not living in urban areas. And we have to remember that there are a lot of black people who live in or around urban areas. So that $310,000, that $18,000 a year is a drop in the bucket. If you live in New York, if you live in DC, if you live in Atlanta, if you live in Houston, and the list could go on and on. So that's part of it. I think when it comes to solutions, what we really have to do is push our local policymakers who we elect to give us an equitable education. We got to realize that right now we have went back to separate and unequal schooling. Black kids primarily go to school with each other. White kids primarily go to school with each other. And sure, there are definitely some places where you can get the racial diversity that we want. But guess what, Lurie, is you have to pay a premium for that, either where you live or where you send your schools at. And we haven't even got to talking about private school. So we need to ensure that our tax dollars are going to support what is happening in our communities, because a lot of black people, particularly middle class black people, spend much more money on education than middle class white people. And that's because our schools continue to fail us, where our kids are coming home in the fourth grade and we like, hold on, you're not learning this. So now you got to supplement it. Now you got to go to Kumon. You got to go to your local mathematics camp and do all this stuff, spending extra money. So the education is key. The other part of it is how far are you having to go for healthcare? Ensuring that there are healthcare resources where when something happens to your child, because if people's kids are like mine, boy, they have all kind of accidents. They fall out of a tree, shoot, they slam their fingers in the doors, and there we in the ER, where I'm just like, geez, this is our third time coming in 6 months. They better not call CPS on us, because these are just accidents. But then when you look at the bill, it's costing a lot of money unless you have really good health insurance. And we know black people are less likely to have their health insurance. I think the final thing, and we mentioned this a second ago, really sit down with your partner, person you married to, the person you had the baby with, everybody in between, the person that is now helping you raise this kid that is not theirs, that is willing to do that, and have a conversation about these costs and budget them. Like do not shy away from how much it is going to cost. Plan it. And then let me tell you what you do. You do like my mama did, and you show your children how much it is costing to raise them, not as saying, that I don't necessarily want you, or that you're costing too much money. No, none of that. But to say, look at the investment we are making. And because of this investment, these are the expectations I have for you. For example, in my household, we made a trade-off. We're like, look, here goes the investment we're making right now in your education. In exchange, we expect for you to make good grades so that when you get ready to go to college, you get scholarships, right? This is part of the exchange. And then we really started talking about wealth, because we're like, if you all do that, now we can start talking about purchasing some sort of condo or property where you go to college at, because you just relieved us. And here goes the kicker. This is going to blow people's minds. College is now costing people $40,000 to $60,000 a year, Lurie, a year. So I want people to think about this: $310,000 to their 18. Then you're gonna basically spend another $200,000 to $300,000 just for those 4 to 5 years they go to college. We have to be serious about that and plan it out and come up with a plan to get our kids scholarships and help them understand that we are a team and we are building something special here.
Ooh, Brittany, that's a round of applause worthy right there, because you just gave me a plan, Dr. Ray, for a conversation we're going to have tonight.
Gotta have it. Yeah, sure. Like I think the biggest thing is we have to be transparent, and we have to come from a place of love. We have to sit down and have a conversation. What this could look like are monthly financial meetings. So first you have the meeting with your spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whomever, and then you have the meeting with the kids as a family. Keep it short when they're young, 30 minutes. But while your kids are running in asking for Robux and Fortnite bucks and all of that kind of stuff, and they want to do the $9.99 a month plan and getting on Crunchyroll and all this stuff that adds up, you sit down and have a conversation with them and you say, hey, look, this is our mortgage. Let's explain what a mortgage is. Yes, we own our home, but in a sense, that's kind of a fallacy. Technically, the bank still owns the home, and we work out something where we pay them money for us to stay here until we pay it off. So this is our mortgage. This is how much our utilities cost. Let's talk about water. Let's talk about electricity. So what that means is when we leave the house for the whole day, and I told you to be ready to leave at 9 o'clock, and you putting on your shoes at 8:59 and you leave all the lights on, guess what? You just cost us money. And because of that, maybe you can't get those Robux this week because you left those lights on, and that's the amount of money it would have been. You teach your kids responsibility. So you're not teaching them responsibility to own the finances. That's not their job. But you are teaching them responsibilities about ways to be smart and savvy, right? The other thing we do is we do projections. So we say, okay, what are some of the things that our family wants to do? Okay, you want to have this big birthday party. That sounds great. Do you have an idea of the cost? How many people do you want to invite? Okay, so you want to invite that many people. So how many hamburgers and hot dogs are those? And you know what you're doing then? You're also teaching your kids math. So you tell them, okay, you want to invite 10 of your friends. How much you think they're going to eat? A hamburger, hot dog, some chips? Okay, let's calculate how much that's going to cost. Where's that money coming from? And then you let your kid make those decisions to say, you know what? Next month, how about I not get $49? Now you still might get them for them, but they're being responsible. Then you really have a heart-to-heart conversation about college. It is never too early to do that. You say, let me tell you what we're doing here. We are making an exchange. We are in an exchange relationship. The exchange for us living where we live, you going to the school you go to, and look, for your middle class, upper class audience is sending their kids to private school, this is really for them. Because I talk to a lot of parents who are sending their kids to private school who chose to live in certain types of neighborhoods and then had to send their kids to private school. And I'm like, and you talking about paying for college? I'm like, I don't really understand what like how that happens because you're making an investment
Wait,
twice.
you saying they are you saying they chose to live in a bougie ass neighborhood and then they realized the schools weren't going to work out, so they had to send their kids to the private schools to get them away from the racism? That's how I
That
interpreted it.
that's
I'm sure
exactly
there are
right.
many interpretations.
That's exactly
Oh,
right.
okay.
That's one model. The other model is they might choose to live in a lower income, a transitioning, gentrifying neighborhood, and they don't like the schools there, and they're paying for private school. And this was my point earlier that black middle class people are much more likely to spend money in education because what happens then you get ready to send your kid to college and you want them to go to the Ivy or you want them to go to the super HBCU or you think that sending them to the state school is the best and then you end up paying $20,000-$30,000 a year. That is not how we should be doing it. Instead, you figure out, you make an exchange with your kids. You say, let me tell you something, academics over everything. Because if you make good grades, we're going to invest in a test taking strategy. As a matter of fact, Larry, this is one of the things that I'm working on as a university professor because as a black professor who is in the 1/10 of 1% to become a full professor before the age of 40, I have this wealth of knowledge about how to get our kids into college and how to get it paid for. And we are going about it the wrong way, the long way. Instead of getting our kids college paid for, it changes the ball game. But the exchange with your kids, back to that part, is saying, look, your job, let me tell you what your job is. My mama told me this. Your job is to make good grades, stay out of trouble, take out the trash, wash the dishes, clean up after yourself. I got the rest. If you don't do those things, we got a problem. And guess what? You can't do the things you want to do. So you know what? When my mom would show me her checkbook, and this was back in the day in the 80s, when she would show it black and red with the check ledger and say, Rayshawn, don't do these things. Do opposite of what I'm doing when it comes to finances. I was like, all I got to do is go to make straight A's and my parents making all that sacrifice. Bet I can do that. And so we have to put a sense of responsibility on our kids from a very young age. I talked to my kids about this today. Today is the second day of school. And I was like, look, guys, what is the investment here? Start fast. Don't start slow. Do what you're supposed to do so that then you can really do what you want to do. So teaching them that financial responsibility is so, so important. Well, people can follow me on social media at Sociologist Ray. People can also check out my YouTube. I'm trying to post more content that are how-tos, such as this, about how we get our kids into college, how we ensure that they're ready for college, things that I'm very familiar with. And so people can check me out on social media at Sociologist Ray and see all the different content that I have. There's a link in my bio for people to see all the work that I'm doing.
Dr. Ray, you are a gem. Much love to you, your beautiful family. Thank you for breaking that down and giving us lots to think about.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to head into our commercial break.